What's going on, people? Welcome to 137 Works, and today we're going to have a look at my kind of mastering and the way that I set things up when I want to make a lo-fi beat inside Koala Sampler here on the iPad. So recently I made a video where I show my kind of whole general process for making a beat, and I kind of just skimmed over some of the general mixing things that I do. But I thought if you were someone that wanted to get into lo-fi and you had no idea where to start as far as like your sound, if you want to get that lo-fi sound kind of, I would show my process in a bit more detail, including what's on my master channel here, what's on my drums, what's on my bass, and yeah, just I thought I'd basically do something as simple as that, just a walkthrough of how I mix and, you know, like not master, but the main channel here for just to get that kind of gritty lo-fi sound. All the tips that I give will be very specific to how you like your sound. If you want a really gritty, crunchy, no high end, you want to tweak some of the sounds, some of the settings that I use here to kind of suit your style a bit more. Or if you like it to sound a bit cleaner and a bit more high end lo-fi, take the settings that I use here and adjust them from there. But this should be a decent start. If you've ever heard any of my tunes and you like how they sound, it's essentially what I'm doing here. There's nothing too crazy about it. The first things first is getting your samples, and as like any kind of self-respecting musician will tell you, beat maker, whatever you want to call it, it's mostly in your sample selection. So I went through and I found a couple of drums here, so a kick and an auxiliary kick, and it's literally just the same thing, just copied and pasted basically. The volume pull down on the auxiliary kick here, so again, I can hear it's a nice, just bumpy, thumpy, low down kick, not a lot of high end going on, no like extra instrument, it's not taken from a song with extra, there's no like hi hat at the end of it or with it, it's just a nice, good sample that I like. Next up is the snare drum. Nice, snappy, punchy snare drum, you can't beat that. And then lastly, it's just the hi-hat here, which is just the same hi-hat copied and pasted, and with the volumes again adjusted between the two to give that little kind of step-in, walk-in hi-hat kind of sound that you're looking for. And just all together, you get a little bit of straightforward enough, nothing crazy, but again, I just needed some sounds to kind of to get it started. And then just up here in the top left, you might notice another sample, and that's just the bass line. Very simple, clean bass sound, not an 808, but like just a clean kind of bass sound. And again, that's nothing amazing with the sounds. It's just something to throw in here to get us started to show what we want to do. So within Koala Sampler, the simplest thing to do is to just press edit and select all the drums that you want and put them all on drum bus A. That's my method of doing it. It's just stick them all on drum bus A there, so they're all together. So when you want to crunch them all up together with a compressor or affect them with an EQ, you're doing it all into one, and it kind of glues them together. So that's the general idea. So here you'd go into main. So now they're all in drum bus A. I'm just going to go in and rename that really quickly to drums, because that's something that you can do, and it's just an easy way to keep track of things basically. So just stick that on drums, and then next up is just going to be the bass line, which is going to go on bus B. So just select bus B, and then same thing, rename that to bass. Again, obviously you don't have to, but just for clarity's sake and being able to keep track of things. Now if we just play what we have here, we should see both the drums on track A and the bass on track B. I just programmed a little drum loop beat bassline thing before I started, nothing fancy, but there we go, so that's confirmed that's working. So now that we have some drums and a bass line that sound good already thrown in, we can now get started with the main kind of master channel effects to kind of give it the sound that we're looking for. So for me, it's very simple. On my FL Studio, if I was using my FL Studio, the DAW that I use on the desktop, I have a bit more of a complicated kind of structure. But for this, the combination of what you do with the drum track itself, with the bass track itself, with the sample tracks, and what you can do individually within the samples, they all combine to give the sound that I'm looking for. So on the main channel, it's actually not that much going on. It's pretty much on the very bottom I put a limiter, and just as it is, leave the gain to 0 for now, attack and release to the minimum level. You want to do it happen as quick as possible for the master channel, and that just means that when we play, now obviously we're going to do some mixing and some volume adjustments and stuff like that, so don't worry about exactly what's happening on the limiter right now. Next up then is just very simply a bit cooker. So the inspiration for the settings on the bit cooker here come from two main sources. Basically the SP1200, which if I'm not mistaken, the 12 and the 1200 stands for the fact that it's a 12-bit sampler essentially. So the bit depth we can pop straight down to 12, and then the sample rate I put it down to 24 kilohertz. Now I think that's because if I'm not mistaken, I got that from the MPC, one of the old MPCs, the MPC 60 or the MPC 2K or whatever. I believe they are 24k sample rate machines. So that's basically what we do. So I'm just going to stick it on 24.2 or 24 if we can get it exactly. I actually can never usually get it on 24. That's hilarious. Jitter, then if you're looking for that warbly kind of Wi-Fi sound on your overall mix, that's what that'll do. It'll kind of sound, give it a bit of a kind of off-tune kind of sound to it. Sort of, not exactly. It's not a warble effect. There is, I'm pretty sure, a warble effect separately, but it's something like that. It jitters the sample rate to kind of just make it sound a bit more crunchy. I don't like that. So that's not for me personally. And then, yeah, we have the mix basically there, which is, as it says on the tin, how much of the big cooker do you want, as from the dry to the wet, the original signal to the crushed one. But that's all I do. I just 12 and 24. May seem very simple, but that's all you really need. So if we play that now as is, straight away you've already got that little bit of nice crunch. Next up, it's just about the individuals then. So the drums, we are going to start off straight away with a compressor to bring them all together. And my method for drums, again, it's a weird one, but it works. So you can take it for what it is. Makeup, enable that, and then put the threshold all the way to -42, the ratio all the way to 100, which is going to sound insane once you actually play them. Now again, stylistically, that could literally be the sound that you want. Not for me personally, so what I'll usually do is I'll go in and mess with the settings. So again, it's just all by ear. Something like that. And then you just basically bring down the threshold to your desired level, which might be handier with the graph for you, depending on how you use it. But for me, it's just somewhere roughly around -18. That's usually about right. And then a 4:1, like a 4:1 ratio. So that's just giving it a nice little, again, the glue, the pump, to keep it all together. Everything just seems like it goes now. Now that's also to keep in mind that it's combined with the fact that it's already been kind of like lightly mixed here with the volumes. So keep that in mind. You want to adjust, like I will tend to adjust the volumes individually rather than, you know, that's why it's good to be able to have everything on the one track here, on the drum track in the kind of mixer, because you can do the individual levels here. So that's pretty handy. Next up then, for the drums, we will do a EQ. My EQ technique is not revolutionary. It's not something that I created myself or whatever. It works, and it sounds fine. So it's going to look a bit strange at first, but you'll get it. So instead of doing the higher low end, you want to grab the middle one first. Start the drum beat, take the EQ, and then bring this up all the way. Now, that might seem insane, like what are you doing? Why are you pumping the low end that high? So what we're actually doing is we are looking for where the kick drum pumps the most, where it absolutely beats down the door the most. So we're not obviously going to leave it like that. We're going to start off by double tapping the Q adjustment, so you can bring it up and down. I tend to find the Q about 2 is about right, where you're getting just the kick frequencies that you want. And then just somewhere like that, yeah, somewhere just bumping it up a little bit around 52, 53 hertz, getting a bit more of thump out of that kick, and you'll see why in a moment. So that even still might be a smidgen much, so you can pull it down a little bit. But it's just giving that little bit extra to the kick drum. You know, it's a boom bap, so you want that big boom. Next up is the high end. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar idea, but it's just going to sweep through and try to find where the high end that you want to cut off. Again, it's going to vary wildly on your style and what you're exactly going for, but for me, I tend to find the falls in and around 8,000 kilohertz. So again, if we play the pattern here, bring up the EQ, again, just to give it a very exaggerated thing, but what I tend to usually find is about, yeah, so somewhere in and around there. That's about that kind of that 8,000. Yeah, so the Q, just, you know, bring it down. We don't need to be accentuating. We're cutting off the high end, so we don't necessarily need to have that little peak there. So somewhere like that is where I like it to be. And so then you get this crystal clear, snappy, punchy drum sound for the compression, but you also get like the rolling off the high end from the EQ and the little boom in the bass line from the low end EQ that we did, obviously. A thing that you can do, it's not absolutely not required, but it's boom bap. So when I said earlier on it's boom bap as well. So what you can do is if you go into the individual snare, you can just pump up where the snare hits the hardest. It's usually around 200 hertz, so that's where, yeah, so with basically those 4 simple plugins, a slight mix on the pads here, and a very simple little EQ on the snare drum, you've got yourself a lovely little boom bap kind of flow going with your drum. So we did that pump up in the kick. So the way that I'd like to describe it, it's like if you've got the peak coming up from the kick, it's because that you're wanting to push down into the bass line. So as the frequencies are coming along, you don't want them butting heads here and here and here. You want to create that little divot, the little pocket for the kick drum to come down into or go up into, whatever way the hands metaphor works best. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do essentially now. So that's essentially, again, it's nothing fancy, it's nothing revolutionary. It's just I'm not showing how it should be done. I'm showing how I do it. So that would be essentially how I do my drums. No big secret sauce or nothing like that, except maybe the bit crusher settings or something. But that's, to me, that sounds good. Like I would be happy to put that out now as say a drum loop in a pack that I sold or something like that. That sounds good enough to me, considering how we started. We played them right next to each other. I'll play a couple of loops of the completely raw sound before we started, with just the levels adjusted, and then I'll play with all the settings, and I'll cut them together back to back so you can hear the difference. A lot more gritty and grimy and just nice, in my opinion, like in that second version with all the effects added on. The last thing that I'll show you is basically just the compressor settings and the EQ settings for the bass, which are the two most important things. Your samples I wouldn't touch on because that's going to vary very wildly. It's going to vary very wildly. I just realized how weird that sounded. Yeah, purely just as a result of, because of like how vastly different the samples are going to be. Where it's just a piano, just strings, just a horn, all of them combined in one sample, an electric guitar. Like, it'll vary too much there to be able to show you much on how I do samples. But for bass lines, these are always the same sort of things that you can apply roughly the same to the same ideas. So with the bass line, if we solo this out now, we have the raw sound. Now I'm going to leave the bit cooker limiter on because, again, usually by the time I'm on bass, I'll have already gotten the bit cooker and the limiter applied. So with the bass line, it's just going to sound something like this. So it has a little high-end kind of buzz to it with the bit cooker being applied. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's got a little bit more high-end now, a little fuzz to it that it didn't have beforehand. So that's going to alternate the sound already. So simple enough, we're going to do the same thing again. So just a compressor, and following the same idea, click makeup, put the threshold and ratio all the way up and down, and then just play it and listen to the attack and release. Mess with the attack and release. So again, very similar settings, especially on the threshold and ratio. Again, they tend to be fine for me. Again, they will vary depending on the sound, but generally speaking, they're a good baseline to kind of start off with, and for the sake of the video, I'll just leave them at that. So that's that. The EQ then, the next thing to do is, as I said, with the EQ and the kick, so we were looking for that pocket. It's not a secret, again, it's a well-known trick in the music kind of industry, or whatever you want to call it. But essentially, what did we do? So we bumped it up at 52 hertz on the kick drum, so that's pumping up some low-end frequencies on the kick drum. So what we're going to do is we're going to scoop out some of that frequency in the bass, essentially. So that's all that is. So we're just going to apply an EQ, and we can do it, you can almost do it visually. It's probably better to do it audibly, but because of the way we're using this visual EQ here, you can actually do it visually as well. So I'm just going to go to 52 hertz and then just pull it down by about what we did the last time, and then just double tap and adjust the Q down to about the same. So cutting that same pocket out, you know, again, it's like yin and yang. It should in theory fit together now. And then that's essentially that. I will typically pull down the I didn't realize the master channel would come down. I must have dragged it with me knuckle or something like that. I'm something of a knuckle dragger myself. Yeah, so the minus 2 basically on the drums to kind of get started for the mix, and then we can just pump up the bass line to taste, essentially. A great tip that I learned years and years ago, I think it might have been way back in college, that a bass line should be felt, not heard. So if you feel like you're hearing the bass coming through, that's too loud. It's a general rule, obviously, like with all these things, they're general rules, general ideas. Generally, you want the bass line to be felt rather than, you just want to get the feeling that there's a lovely little bass line there pumping you along, rather than hearing it crushing your ears. So that's what I was looking for there. So that's basically seemed to be where I found it. So. And again, you can go in, fine-tune the specific volumes, like after pumping up the little, the 200 hertz of the snare, if you find that that's a bit loud, you can bring it back down. I think it's sounding okay here so far. That's just the general idea. And then obviously you can load in your samples and apply some of the similar effects. Like I often find applying another bit cooker to a sample, depending on what it is, can actually add another little level there. You can kind of add a little grit to it. So that's like a little trick. Again, very simple stuff. I'm not claiming to have rewritten the book on mixing or anything like that here. It's just applying tastefully what you know to the sounds that you have here. The last thing that you can do is you can pump up the limiter. Now that you've got everything kind of mixed and got some of the balance right, you can pump up the limiter to bring it up now to a decent overall volume. So so it could be something like that again. So we're still under 0, so you've still got room for if you ever send it out to be master or whatever that, you've still got that little headroom for them to work with. But it's going to be a little bit louder if you're just wanting to share this track with your friends or something like that. You know, it's not going to be sent off to be mixed and mastered and put as part of a CD or in a CD. Show my age there a little bit. Put online as part of like an album or something like that, where it's going to be level matched with other tracks or whatever. Just having that little extra bump for the loudness is nice, but while also having the headroom still to play with. So that's basically it. It's just a quick video. I wanted to do a music video today and just kind of get that done. I actually recorded this video in full yesterday, and I recorded the whole thing in OBS and realized that I didn't have the correct amount of tracks enabled in OBS, which was kind of annoying, but happy to do it again. And I should have it up now. It's 20 past 6 as I record this. I plan to have it uploaded and live at 8 p.m. An hour and 40 minutes to edit on. So let's hope that goes well. That's about it. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.